Construction equipment made by Schwing, the optimum solution for all applications. Our products reflect the experience gathered in 50 years of development, research, production, and marketing. Schwing sets standards for more efficiency, increased economy, highest quality, absolute reliability, and technical competence. Schwing, unrivaled in consulting and service in West Germany and in more than 100 countries of the world. More than 3,000 employees are producing for you in Germany, Austria, Brazil, and in the USA. Schwing's invaluable advantage: close to the market, close to the customer. This video film deals with repair instructions for the rock valve. For clearer presentation, a rock valve model corresponding to the original has been photographed. For the same reason, the hopper and the agitator are already disassembled, although this is not required for all tasks. Replacement of the cutting ring, pressure spring, and housing lining, inlet side. The cutting ring to rock valve clearance is an indication of the cutting ring condition. If it exceeds 8 mm or 10 mm when equipped with a disc spring assembly, the cutting ring must be replaced. First of all, slacken the securing bolt on the pivot lever. Then remove the bolts which secure the housing cover. Prise the cover approximately 20 mm away from the housing. Now the cutting ring and the pressure spring can be removed without problems. The rubber spring is taken out via the outlet, and the disc spring the same way as the cutting ring. At this point, also check the condition of the housing lining, which has to be replaced as soon as the grooves are more than 4.5 mm deep at several points. For disassembly of the housing lining, the Allen screws must be unscrewed. The plate can be taken out after having been prized away from the pumping cylinders. Let us now deal with the installation of the parts shown before. Before inserting a new pressure spring, the respective rock valve area must be cleaned carefully. Grease the pressure spring slightly before, but too much grease results in increased spring pre-tension and premature wear of the cutting ring and housing lining. Before repositioning the housing lining, this must be lightly greased and fitted with new O-rings. Screw the Allen screws in again to secure the housing lining. Then tighten the securing bolt on the pivot lever. On reassembling the cutting ring, take care that it's fitting correctly, that is, in full contact with the pressure spring. Replacement of the kidney seal, housing lining, outlet side, and cover lining. After unscrewing the securing bolt, loosen the adjusting nut and remove the locking disc from the pivot shaft. Then unscrew two securing bolts from the housing cover, insert installation rods into the holes, and then remove the remaining bolts. At this point, also check the condition of the housing lining. If grooves with a depth of more than 2.5 millimeters are found in the contact area, remove the securing bolts and detach the lining. Replacement of the cover lining requires the following operations: removing the connection piece from the cover, pressing out the old cover lining, greasing the outer diameter of the new cover lining, and fitting this into the cover. After having cleaned all mating surfaces of the connection piece and inserted a new O-ring, it can be mounted again. When inserting the new, slightly greased kidney seal, take care that the flat surface is towards the housing cover. Before then mounting the cover lining, clean its mating surface as well as the contact area of the housing cover. Then the lining, provided with a new O-ring, is screwed onto the housing cover. Next, the housing cover is secured again and the locking disc replaced. The adjusting nut which follows must only be tightened by hand. But if the rock valve to housing lining clearance exceeds 1.5 to 2 millimeters, or 3.5 millimeters when using a disc spring assembly, this must be remedied by a further tightening of the adjusting nut. Then tighten it to the next available hole and replace the locking screw. Replacement of the rock valve, pivot shaft and pivot shaft bearing. After having dismantled the housing cover as shown earlier, the rock valve must be supported by placing wedges underneath. Then the securing bolts are removed and the rock valve can be detached. When dismounting the pivot shaft, undo the fastening of both the pivot lever and of the pivot cylinder pin retainer bolt. Remove the cover and the retainer bolt. Remove the cylinder pivot pin from the lever, move the pivot lever away from the cylinder rod, and remove it from the pivot shaft. In so doing, check the markings on the shaft and lever and renew them if necessary. Now come the bearing bushes. To replace them, first of all, unscrew the seal cover. Then press the bushes out. After having cleaned the bores, use the installation tool to fit the bush on the pivot lever side. Insert the bush so that it's flush with the end of the bush housing. On the housing lining side, install the new bush so that it protrudes 5 millimeters from the housing. Insert a new O-ring into the seal cover and then assemble it onto the 5 millimeter projection. The same operations are required on the housing cover side. Pressing out the bush, cleaning the bore, fitting a new bush using the installation tool, and inserting a new O-ring. When mounting the pivot shaft, take care that the marking on the square is uppermost. The toothing and the pivot lever must be positioned correctly so that the two marks visibly coincide. Then screw the securing bolts on the pivot lever in again and tighten them. Back to the rock valve. Support the rock valve, which is always equipped with a new pressure spring before it's reinstalled in the housing. It's most important that the pivot shaft is installed in the same position as when removed. Fit 2 new O-rings each side and new spring washers under the securing bolt heads. With the bolts slack, the rock valve must be pushed forward on the pivot shaft to the limit of travel. Now it's fixed in the correct position and the securing bolts can be tightened. Now we mount the cutting ring and the housing cover as shown before.